Hi, it's Lindsay with High Sierra Legal, and today we're going to talk about the roles in a trust, or who plays a role in a trust. So last episode we talked about what a trust is, kind of the nitty-gritty of what a trust is. That who's forming the trust? That's a trustor. That's you giving yourself to manage as trustee. What we're going to call the trust, who's going to manage that trust, and where's that trust assets going to go. There's a trust. 5 components, super easy. Again, we like to have more things in our trust documents of how to manage it, what we're going to do with things. There's definitely some clauses we want to have in there, and we can go over those as well later on a different episode. But today we're going to talk about who plays a role in that trust. So when we talk about a trust and who, these weird nebulous attorney terms essentially of what those mean. So what is a trustor? So a trustor is the person who is forming the trust. They are the person who is creating the trust and giving their assets to this trust to be managed by the trust. So that's the first person. That's the trustor, is typically you, who is creating this trust. You have the authority to create this trust and to transfer those assets. The term is also called settlor. You can see that a lot too. The settlor, S-E-T-T-L-O-R, trust or. The OR is denoting that the authority to do those things, okay? So that's the first part. Creating that trust, you have the authority to create that trust. Secondarily is who's going to initially manage that trust. Oftentimes, it's the same person because you're of sound mind, body, and able to manage your assets accordingly. And so that's why it's called the trustee. So you're the trustee getting the stuff that you as trustor has given to the trust to now manage. You can have other people on there, but they have direct managerial control. Sometimes we do that with older people or people who maybe need some more managerial aspects for things. We can have a different person as the trustee, but typically with a revocable living trust that you're creating for you and your family to avoid probate, you're going to be one and the same because you're managing your assets as it is. You won't need anybody right now to manage those assets because you're able to do it already. So first off, trustor giving you as trustee now to manage the trust. So 2 things. So you as the same person. So trustor giving or creating the trust. Trustee who is initially now going to manage that trust. You are now the manager of this quote unquote family business, if you will. Last episode we talked about, we formed the ice cream shop. We formed the family business of our trust or our estate plan or revocable living trust. So now you as trustee are that manager. So you got hired for that job at the ice cream shop. You are now the manager of that trust. Then what happens if you are unable to be the trustee anymore? You are incapacitated, you're in a coma, you're acting a little weird, you're getting a little old, you're in a coma, or you're dead. So incapacity or death will trigger successor trustees. So that is your next manager in line, or your understudy, if you will. That is the person who is going to then take over the managerial aspect of the trust if the original trustee is unable to. Again, incapacity or death. That person is who's going to typically, if it's death, then manage the trust and the estate to then make sure everything gets wound down, taken care of, and then distributed according to the wishes of the trust. The next set of people or roles in the trust, revocable living trust, is the beneficiaries. Where is this assets and where is this trust going to go? So that's where we have our distribution section in there, and we talk about who's going to get our stuff. Who's going to get these assets in the estate plan and in this trust? Where's it going to go? So those are typically people's children, charities, friends, whoever. Honestly, you can name it however you want. Most people typically put their children, and we like to be specific when we name our beneficiaries because, again, I always say, if a 4th grader got this document, could a 4th grade class read this and go, yep, Sue Smith gets 50% and John Smith gets the other 50%, and if one of them should predecease, their children will take their share, and if both of them should predecease without children, or one of them predeceases without children, they're going to get the remainder of the full estate, and if both of them are not here, it's going to go to the ASPCA or whoever you want it to go to. That's the benefit of that estate planning beneficiary designation section of who's going to get your stuff, and we provide for those contingency plans that if that person isn't here, where is that share going to go? So it's not going to get locked out, it's not going to go through probate, their heirs aren't going to have to probate that anyway because you have provided for those contingency plans. Best thing about the revocable living trust is you have managerial control over that if you want to change those beneficiaries, they're not set in stone. So, like I said, little Jimmy starts acting like a fool, starts dating some weirdo. Just take him right out. We just do an amendment and say, nope, you don't get your share anymore. You know, he gets better, we put him back in. Or we can have parameters in there that, you know, upon, you know, dating this weirdo, that you only get 5% every year for the next 15 years or whatever it is. You know, you can make those contingency plans or parameters within that distribution. Whereas if you, again, just had a direct beneficiary, there are no really contingencies or parameters that can be put into there. So that's the kind of benefit of our revocable living trust. With that, we have other documents within our estate plan, and we'll go over those in a different video about, you know, agents and executors and pour over wills or powers of attorney. But for the trust itself, the roles in that trust are the trustor. That would be you. So hopefully you understand this now, that you are creating this trust. That is the person who's giving the authority and the assets to the trust. They are creating the trust. They are the creator. They are giving that stuff now to the trustee, which is the initial person to manage the trust, typically, which is the same person. Who's going to manage this trust when that trustee is no longer with us, or the trustor is no longer with us? To manage the trust, who is that successor trustee after that first person? That initial trustee is not available with us. And we usually have contingent people after that. So I like to go 3 people down. So we have the initial trustee, which is typically you. If you are married and you have a marital revocable trust or a family trust, you would have, you know, your spouses always for each other. So spouse A is unable or passes away, then the remainder of the trust is managed by the spouse 2. When both spouses pass away, then who's going to manage that trust? We have our successor trustee. And if that person's not available, let's have another person as a backup. And sometimes we like to go even further down, is let's have another backup. So we have you as the initial trustee, your successor trustee. If your first successor trustee is not available, let's have a secondary successor trustee. And if that person's not available, let's have a third, just so we have a plan. If, you know, I would say, God forbid, we're all in a car accident, where's it going to go? Who's going to manage it? You know? So that's pretty much the whole thing of how that works and who are the roles in our estate plan that way. So again, questions, concerns, hit me up on my website, highsierralegal.com, or check me out on Instagram or Facebook at High Sierra Legal. Thanks, guys.